this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my electrician I found on Angie.com to bury my pet hamster Nibbles in our yard for me? Because I was so moved by how carefully he buried my electrical wires, I knew I could trust him to bury my sweet Nibbles after his untimely end. Nibbles, gone too soon. May he scurry in peace.
Hey, sorry about your pet, but I just wire stuff.
Nibbles would have loved you like a brother.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time, 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Support for The Middle comes from the stations that air the show and from you. Thanks for making a donation at listentothemiddle.com.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with our house DJ Tolliver. And Tolliver, of course, as you know, as we go to air, people are still processing yet another political assassination, that of Charlie Kirk, who was shot at a campus event in Utah. This comes just a few months after the House Speaker in Minnesota, Melissa Hortman, and her husband were assassinated. And there are so many other examples of political violence from recent years. And of course, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that our democracy only works if we are willing to communicate with each other in good faith, to talk and listen even when we disagree. That's what The Middle is all about. And I want to thank our listeners for always keeping it civil in this space. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I can second that as somebody who reads the comments. They're usually pretty civil, and then when they're not, people are cussing. I edit that out. So that's how we handle that.
Take care of it for us. Okay, thank you, Tolliver. So this hour, we want to get into something very important that's happening right now, which is the partisan drawing of congressional maps, something that's been around for a long time but is back on the front pages now after President Trump asked Texas Republicans to draw new maps mid-decade. They're usually only drawn after the census every 10 years. Well, Republicans in Texas obliged. Then California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom said he wanted to draw new maps in California to even the playing field. Now Missouri, Indiana, maybe Florida, all jumping into this game. But what all this could mean is that a lot of Democrats in Republican-led states will have no or very little representation in Congress. Same for a lot of Republicans in Democratic-led states. And it brings us to our question. Do you feel represented by the political process, and what does fair representation look like to you? We're taking your calls in a moment at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. But first, last week on the show, we talked about some of the biggest challenges facing Gen Z. We got so many Gen Z callers, and here are some of the comments we got on our voicemail.
Nick from Denver. As Gen Z, the biggest issue for me at the very least is no feeling of stability or completeness. Graduating in 2020, getting my first adult job in the COVID times, all that fun stuff. It just, nothing ever feels complete or real.
Anthony Caldwell, calling from Chicago. I'm a boomer, raising a Gen Z. My main thing to worry about is that every Gen Z I meet, the type of business they're going into, most of it will be taken over by AI. And I'm kind of afraid of the future of them being able to find jobs.
Hi, my name is June, and I'm calling from Mankato, Minnesota. What I'm worried about as a Gen Zer is the idea of ever owning a home. It seems like some far off alternate reality that like I could ever own a home. No one's ever explained to me like how to take out a loan for a home. What is a mortgage? I don't know what a mortgage is.
Maybe we'll have to do a show about that. Thanks to everyone who called in. You can subscribe to The Middle wherever you listen to podcasts and hear that whole show. So now to our question this hour. Do you feel represented by the political process, and what does fair representation look like to you, Tolliver? How can people reach us?
You can call us at 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can write to us at listentothemiddle.com. Like I said, I'm reading all your comments, so get them in.
Joining me this hour, reigning champion of appearances on The Middle, USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey. Hi, Phillip. Great to have you back.
Jeremy, how's it going?
It's going well. And we've also got with us Charles Bullock, professor of political science at the University of Georgia and author of the book Redistricting, the Most Political Activity in America. You are the preeminent expert on redistricting. How unusual is what's happening now with all these states trying to change the maps in the middle of the decade?
Well, yeah, changing maps in the middle of the decade itself is unusual. What's particularly unusual about it this time is that the changes are being made in areas that have already been gerrymandered. Now, 20 years ago, there was also some mid-decade redistricting in Texas and Georgia, and in those cases, Republicans were putting in their own gerrymanders and wiping out Democratic gerrymanders. But this time around, these states which are now making further changes have already been gerrymandered. So this is kind of building on the extreme gerrymanders that were already in place.
And Phillip, what are the political calculations here? Because I was reading that actually lawmakers hate it when their districts get changed because it makes running for re-election much more difficult and unpredictable.
Well, look, I think, President Donald Trump has shown his cards pretty clearly, right? Understanding that presidents often lose representation in Congress in that first midterm election, and particularly with the controversies and consternation about the big, beautiful bill coming out, which you notice that Republicans aren't really talking all that much about these days. He certainly is telegraphing that he doesn't think that Republicans are going to be able to retain their majorities in the House and the Senate. So it's a very open process here. This is all about politics. This isn't about, we need to do these redistricting because of some sort of fair government representation. It's all about, hey, I want more seats to ensure that Republicans maintain their majority. Democrats, it seems, though, who often just a few years ago were arguing that we need good government, we need these independent commissions to do it, they're now racing to the bottom with the Republicans, led by Gavin Newsom. There were some, obviously, in that space who say Democrats shouldn't do that, but I think Governor Newsom and other Democrats are saying, hey, look, we're going to fight fire with fire here and do the exact same thing that President Trump is doing to even the odds.
Charles, is there a potential for a backfire for Republicans if there is a wave election next year, that if they redistrict and make these districts tighter for everybody, that they could lose even more seats by making them all more competitive?
Well, that's exactly the potential. Yeah, if this is a wave election, then districts which are thought to be 7, 8, maybe even 10 points Republican might not be sufficient if there is a huge swing against this. And as Phillip said, yeah, we know that in a midterm election, invariably the vote goes against the president's party, and each of our recent presidents has lost at least control of one of the chambers in Congress. So, yeah, the Republicans know that they are on thin ice with this tiny majority they have right now. And even though they've tried to pack some districts to make it more secure for them in Texas, if it's a big wave election, that might not be sufficient.
Phillip, how do voters feel about this? When you look at how they feel about their politicians saying, you know what, this would be easier if we just made these districts better for this party that's in power.
Well, look, Americans are not a fan of the idea of politicians picking them rather than them picking politicians. We saw hundreds of protests against President Trump's effort here to change the outcome or to influence the outcome of the midterm elections. But polls were done on this. In fact, a Reuters Ipsos poll done in August found that more than half of respondents, about 57%, said they feared for American democracy and that it's in danger because of this tilt. And that includes high percentages of Democrats and even 46% of Republicans. Again, I think it's 71% of Democrats, 46% of Republicans, and 52% of people who identify as others. So the American people aren't a fan of this either. And I think the professor is right. If we see a wave election, there's no guarantee that these seats will automatically go for Republicans in the way they think. And again, we learned this, I think, from some of the filibuster fights when Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid were battling it out in the Senate, that whatever power you take for yourself in politics, remember, your opponents can take that same power when they are voted in the majority.
Right. Charles, what makes up a fair political district? Can such a thing actually be achieved?
Well, so a fair district would be for a state, okay? And often the thumbstick is used for this would be, is the congressional delegation roughly reflective of the way the state votes in statewide elections? So, for example, the plan that was in place in 2022 in North Carolina produced 7 Democrats, 7 Republicans. All right, North Carolina is a very competitive state. It has currently both Democrats and Republicans serving in statewide offices. So one could look at that and say, yeah, that pretty much reflects the division of the state in terms of its partisanship. When that was redrawn by Republicans, it then became a 10 Republican, 4 Democratic makeup. And so if your baseline is how does this state vote for presidential or gubernatorial elections, that's way out of kilter.
Let me sneak in a call here, and Hugh is calling from South Carolina. Hugh, welcome to The Middle. Do you feel represented by the political process?
Not in national elections, especially.
Why?
Because I don't understand why we're having a national election and it becomes a winner-take-all on a per-state.
This podcast is supported by the original organic bedding and bath brand, Koyuchi.
Koyuchi has spent 35 years pioneering quality organic textiles, long before the word organic became, trendy. But words matter to Koyuchi. Words like craftsmanship, longevity, and wellness. So what does the word wellness mean to Koyuchi? It means that all of our products are absolutely free from harsh chemicals and dangerous toxins that can seep into your skin. It means effortless style that looks as good as it feels with naturally breathable, pre-washed organic cotton. And what does all of that mean to you? Well, it means that you can sleep well in Koyuchi's crisp, cool, luxuriously soft sheets that are ethically made and made with you in mind. Live well, sleep well with Koyuchi. And now during our Memorial Day sale event, you can enjoy 20% off organic cotton sheets, towels, and everything else at Koyuchi.com. That's Koyuchi.com for 20% off from now until May 25th. Koyuchi.com.
Basis. Why can't the Electoral College be divided on a proportional basis regarding, Democratic, Republican voters?
So it's the Electoral College. What about on a statewide basis? Do you feel represented by your senators, by your representatives in Congress in South Carolina?
I don't know. I think maybe ranked choice voting should be employed across a lot of other elections. So a Senate election is for the state. I understand why that would be a winner take all, but I also feel that maybe ranked choice voting would allow alternate candidates to get into the race and have people be able to vote for them with their ranked choice without feeling that they're just throwing their vote away.
Hugh, thank you for that. And I'm sure we're going to talk about ranked choice voting because this always seems to come up when we talk about the political process. But Tolliver, like we said, California is at the center of this conversation. But back in 2010, they tried to eliminate partisan political redistricting through a ballot measure.
Yeah, they actually picked members of this commission lottery style. Here's a news clip on this from KCRA.
The lottery cage was set up.
So as you can see, number 1.
The number balls were teed up. The audience was lined up with suspense in the air. It had all the earmarks of a game show, but this drawing may well be the most significant lottery California's ever staged in terms of how the state is governed.
And it's going to be a whole new ball game here in California. We're not going to have lawmakers drawing their own districts.
Approved by voters 2 years ago as Prop 11, a pet cause of Governor Schwarzenegger, 8 finalists were picked today out of 30,000 initial applicants.
Good time to mention, Tolliver, that I did not win the multi-billion-dollar Powerball, since we're thinking about
that
lottery.
That was my whole savings plan for you to lend me some money.
So that means that people can still contribute to the middle at listentothemiddle.com. It's tax deductible, and it's very important to the success of this program. So make a contribution. We really appreciate it. We'll be right back with more of The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
How do you make chicken nuggets like 7,000% better? Short answer, you let Taco Bell make them. Long answer, start with all white meat chicken nuggets, bread them in crunchy tortilla chips, and serve them with Hidden Valley Diablo Ranch. Yep, that's Hidden Valley Ranch mixed with Taco Bell Diablo sauce. It's exactly what it sounds like, and somehow even better. Simple math, spicy results. Crispy chicken nuggets from Taco Bell. A brand new classic. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only, while supplies last.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking if you feel represented by the political process and what fair representation looks like to you. Tolliver, what is the number to call in?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on social media.
I'm joined by political scientist Charles Bullock at the University of Georgia and USA Today chief political correspondent Phillip Bailey. And before we get back to the phones, Charles Bullock, this conversation goes well beyond House races. There are many people in this country who are, as we just heard there, blue in a red state or red in a blue state. It could be 55 to 45%, but the minority party doesn't get 45% of the power. They don't get that proportional representation. Is there a better way for more people to feel represented in our democracy?
Well, conceivably, yeah, we could move towards a European system with proportional representation. And under that system, then you have multi-member districts. You don't have the single-member districts like we make use of here. And in a multi-member system, then, yeah, you can end up with roughly the same proportion of seats held by a party as its share of the vote. Now, that would be pretty alien to what we've done in America for 250 years, but that would be a way in which we could achieve something approaching a proportional representation.
And Philip, when you think about the representation for minority groups, including black people, a lot of the issues around redistricting has been about that, a lack of proper representation. Is that conversation being lost in this latest political battle?
Well, look, I think, I had an opportunity to talk to black legislators from Texas when they had left to go to Illinois to sort of delay the inevitable redistricting map there. Let's look at, for example, the Missouri First map that's being passed by Republicans there. It tries to break up, or it seeks to break up, the Democratic-held district in Kansas City held by 11-term incumbent Emmanuel Cleaver, and basically split that district into two. So the racial component to this isn't being lost either. That when Republicans have to go after these Democratic areas, these Democratic seats, and split them up and divide them up, they have to essentially go after black and brown, oftentimes, voters. And that's entirely what you saw the Civil Rights Movement and the Voting Rights Act and everything being fought over. So the erosion of the Voting Rights Act by the Supreme Court, this attack on redistricting and sort of splitting up these predominantly black districts, right? It's not just a partisan fight here. There's a racial component within this redistricting fight that people like Eric Holder, former Attorney General, who's been adamant about fighting against redistricting up until I guess Democrats decided to follow Republicans on this issue. That racial component cannot be lost. And you're seeing more and more black constituents speak up here and saying in these protests that, hey, if these folks can't win, they're basically cheating us out of our representation. Mm-hmm. And I'll just add one more point. That goes back to black history in terms of Reconstruction. This has been a bedrock issue for black Americans really since emancipation.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to Devin, who's in Brewster, New York. Devon, I guess it is. Devon, wow, you've got a chime when I come to you. Hello, welcome to the middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hello, Jeremy. How are you? Yes. How are you? Yes. I just like in agreement with the other guy was saying. This redistricting has become a huge problem. The reason why it's become a huge problem is because you got people that just want to, these Republicans that just want to game the system. There's a game here, and like the dude said with the Voting Rights Act, it falls in line with the Voting Rights Act also because they want to they don't want to draw fair maps by they're doing it on a racial matter and a partisan, but it's more common that it's becoming a racial matter. And we got to understand that this has happened ever since we look back to the Supreme Court decision in 2019 of Rucho versus Common Core. Okay, they said, John Roberts said, it's okay to gerrymander, partisan gerrymander, as long as it's not by race. But this is what's causing the problem, okay, where you go to judicial, the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is saying that basically it's okay to gerrymander without no judicial oversight. So what I think we should do is that since we don't get fair representation, we as Democratic states, as I'm in, which is New York, like my governor Kathy Hochul said, we got to fight back. Bottom line.
So you want Kathy Hochul to do the same thing. You want to fight fire with fire and have your Democratic governor go in and redistrict because that's what states like Texas are doing.
You got it. You got it. Because if Texas is doing it, we got to do it too. We got to fight back. Yeah. It's not fair.
Interesting.
We just got to fight
All
back.
right.
And even though it violates the 14th and 15th Amendment, it is what it is.
Yeah. Devon, thank you very much for that.
Jeremy,
and,
give him 30 more minutes, man. Come on.
Well, and Phillip Bailey, what about that? What do you think about that? Actually, let me ask you, Charles Bullock, what do you think about that, hearing from a voter there who says, yes, I want my governor to do the same thing? Is this a race to the bottom or what?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what it's become, right? If Republicans are going to do it, Democrats are going to try to fight back. What Devon's pointing out, now, if you say that you're drawing districts based on partisanship, you can get away with about anything. Now, of course, in much of the country, and certainly this is true in the South, where race and party run collinear. So if you've got a heavily Democratic district, it's going to be a heavily minority district. And so, yeah, if you're drawing it, you're saying, well, we're discriminating here against Democrats, which the Supreme Court says is okay. Well, you're also then discriminating against the minorities. And so in North Florida, a district that had been held by a black Democrat for 30 years was carved up and done away with in 2022.
Let's go to John, who's in Rockford, Illinois. John, what do you think about this issue, and do you feel represented by the political process?
Thanks for taking my call. I see no meaningful difference between partisan gerrymandering by either party and literacy tests, poll taxes, and other devices concocted in the Jim Crow South. They are all intended to deprive a targeted population of a meaningful, or for that matter, any sort of election day experience. In so doing, they are an assault upon our democracy. There is no such thing as good partisan gerrymandering. Anyone who engages in it is an enemy of the Constitution.
Well, and you, John, like me, are at least I used to be a resident of the state of Illinois, but Illinois is incredibly gerrymandered, as we have seen. How do you feel about that in your home state?
I hate it. Well, before the redistricting, our governor Pritzker said redistricting is going to be transparent, he told us. And it was transparently anti-democratic. Have you seen like the 13th district or the 17th district? I live in Rockford. I'm in the 60s, but right across the street, there are people in the 70s who are also in the same district with Springfield and Bloomington, 200 miles away. So it's terrible.
Yeah,
Safe
John,
seats
thank you
for
very
14
much.
Democrats. Yeah, you're welcome.
Right. Thank you so much for that call. You know, Philip Bailey, I remember, and I've said this before, not for a while because we haven't talked about this in a long time, but the great Ann Richards, the late Ann Richards, the last person to win statewide in Texas back in the 1990s as governor. She was on Larry King Live back in the day, and she said, "Larry, some of these districts are so narrow you could drive down the street with both your car doors open and hit every house."
That's a pretty good.
It's true. What? Right. I mean, it's not that good, but I try my best. But what about that?
Well, look, I mean, the consequence for this is when people complain about, oh, Congress can't get anything done or America doesn't seem to be able to address these issues, well, look no further than how our congressional districts are drawn. There was a time back in the ancient 1990s where you had a lot more overlap, a lot more moderate people and lawmakers in Congress. Well, the consequence of these states saying, oh, we're going to have 7-1 or 8-0 representation is Congress is going to be more gridlocked. One party is going to have control, very little is going to get done, right, at the congressional level. So these things have an effect on each other. I think one thing I am hearing a lot more, Jeremy, from different organizations is that, you know, this effort and these attacks on democracy, there may be this renewed effort to, particularly with the 250th anniversary of the United States, our birthday coming up next year, this call for a renewal of democracy. People are talking about having national elections, national referendums, because when you look, you know, you also see efforts to erode the ability to have national referendums in certain states. More and more Americans on both sides are talking about direct democracy than I've heard in years past.
Right, which has its own problems sometimes as well. Alex is calling in from Southeast Texas. Alex, do you feel represented by the political process there in Texas?
Yeah. Hi, good evening, guys. How are y'all today? Yes, I feel represented. You know, I've never had an issue with redistricting. I live in, I guess you would call the greater part of Houston. But, you know, I just don't get why it's always an issue when Republicans want to do it. And it's never an issue when Democrats want to do it. It's this whole theme always. The media picks up on what Democrats complain about, and now they're complaining about gerrymandering. But the Republicans are doing it, so it's a big deal now. But, you know, as I told the call taker, California and New York are the biggest gerrymandering states there are. And Republicans, although they have large populations that vote for them, a large voter turnout, they're very, very underrepresented in those states. California, I think statistically, I think we were doing a study, California has probably more registered Republicans than Texas, yet they're very underrepresented. You know, so I mean, Gavin Newsom, actually, like I told the call taker,
Well, I was just going to say, Alex, you know, the county of Los Angeles had more people voting for Trump in the last election than the entire state of Louisiana, which is interesting to think about. Oh, wow. But I take your point. Thank you very much for that. And Charles Bullock, give us the historical context here. Is what Alex is saying correct, that Democrats do it even more than Republicans?
Both sides do it. If you've got a trifecta arrangement where you control both chambers of your legislature and your governor, yeah, you're going to do some gerrymandering, you know. So if we were doing this show 20 years ago, we'd be talking about how in Texas and in Georgia there was midterm redistricting, and that was to undo Democratic gerrymanders, and Republicans are just taking control. So, yeah, nobody comes into this historically with clean hands, and, yeah, we've never done this. And as the earlier caller came in, yeah, I mean, Illinois is a Democratic gerrymander right now in place. So is Maryland, and you know, Texas and Florida. Yeah, those are Republican gerrymanders.
Well, and Charles, do you think that the idea of like independent commissions, the way that California had done it, at least until now, that has any future now in a world where everybody wants to gerrymander even more?
Well, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, that where commissions have come in place, it's often been as a result of the initiative process, not as a result of the legislature stepping forward and doing it. So that is a means by which, at least in states that permit an initiative, that the public can express what it would like to see done when it comes to drawing districts. Now, not every state has, the initiative process. Georgia, for example, does not. But where that has been done, yes, you're more likely to end up with a situation which scores relatively well when it comes to applying fair standards to what the districts look like.
Colton is calling from Lake Tahoe, California. Beautiful Lake Tahoe, California. Yeah. Colton, you are in a state that's at the center of this. How do you feel about your representation?
Hey, Jeremy. Thanks for letting me on here. I appreciate it. To answer your question directly, I feel grossly underrepresented in California as a single-party system. I would define representation here as hopeless for anything other than Democratic agenda.
So you're a Republican?
I'm a Republican. I live in a county that's Republican, and the geographic density of California makes it very difficult for Republican representation year over year with all of the gerrymandering and everything else happening around the state. I know the other caller was mentioning the density of voters for Trump in Los Angeles County, et cetera. There's definitely a Republican presence in the state, but regardless of what happens, representation is not adequate, in my opinion.
Do you have a solution, Colton? You want to break California up into a number of states or anything like that?
Yeah, I would. Actually, my county I live in, there's been a big push for the state of Jefferson. I really do feel that California is justified to be both a southern and northern piece, geographically speaking. It's too much geographical land with the density of populations with kind of just a different mindset based, on living in a city or producing agriculture or whatnot in the more rural areas of the state.
Yeah, Colton, thank you so much for that call. And Phillip Bailey, you're joining us from Louisville, Kentucky, which, like many cities in red states, is probably a bluish or purplish city in a red state. Every place has this. Every state has this situation where they might not feel exactly represented by their state, or at least a lot of the people in the states don't.
Right. I mean, look, the way that California Republicans feel is how a lot of Kentucky Democrats feel right now. I mean, out of the 100 state legislative seats in the House, only 19 are Democrats right now. So go ask them about how well represented they feel generally. And we see this show up, right, Jeremy, during presidential races during the Electoral College, where most Americans are locked out of picking the president. It's really only a handful of states every year, 5 to 7 states, where, places like Pennsylvania, Arizona, those purple states that have a say-so. So many of us feel locked out of our state governments, locked out of these national elections. And I think, again, Democrats are going to have to reckon with this, particularly in the 2030 census, as more people leave these blue states, which are very, very expensive, and move into cheaper red states. But look, all this talk about, I want to break up my state, or I want to change the dynamics here, I do think that we're going to have a reckoning at this midterm elections, particularly if Republicans don't prevail. And there is going to have to be a larger conversation about the health of our democracy that Donald Trump himself poisoned when he continued to lie about the 2020 election results. And from that, we have seen a renewed, I think, spirit of democracy. I think that we all want better representation, but I'm not sure that breaking up states is the way to go about it. I do think that we're going to have some reforms we're going to be talking about over the next couple of years.
Tolliver, what is coming in on listentothemiddle.com?
David in Wyoming says, I consider myself somewhere in the middle of the political spectrum, and I do not feel represented. I feel the political process rewards extremism. Rudy in Denver says, regarding representation, it's time to expand the size of the House. 435 is arbitrary and about 100 years old. And finally, Lucy in Grand Rapids says, I will never feel represented as long as we have the Electoral College.
Charles Bullock, what about expanding the size of the House, though? Yeah. That's I just want to hear what Charles Bullock thinks about expanding the size of the House from 435.
Right, yeah, and there's been work which suggests that given our population, we should have a larger House in order to make it, say, proportional to our population vis-a-vis, say, the size of the House of Commons in Britain or the German Bundestag. That we are much too small. And the time to do that probably would be, say, at the time of a reapportionment, so right after the next census. And, and for from the time of the beginning of the Republic up until 1910, we always did expand the House. There was one exception when we didn't, but most of our history we did, and then since then it's been this arbitrary 435.
Yeah, I guess it's a round number to some people. Tolliver, as we mentioned, Texas is central to this conversation, and Texas Democrats tried to delay the redistricting there by fleeing to Illinois as a group so the vote couldn't happen.
Yeah, one of the leaders of that group was Texas State Rep James Tallarico, who spoke at a church in Chicago.
This American democracy is more than just a constitution. It's a covenant. It's a relationship between neighbors. It's a promise that we make to each other to share this country. Some of the most powerful people in this nation are breaking that promise as we speak. With every gerrymandered district, with every suppressed vote, they are breaking that sacred promise.
And as you know, Tolliver, the Democrats were not successful in stopping that vote from happening. They eventually did come back to Texas, although Tallarico made such a name for himself, he's now running for Senate in Texas. So it may actually work out well for him. Let's see. Yeah. I'll be back with more of your calls on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have we asked our contractor we found on Angie.com to be our kids' legal guardian? Because he took such good care when redoing our basement that we knew we could trust him to care for our kids, all 8 of them, should something happen to us.
Are you my dad now?
No, sorry, I do basements.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured 2 prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. In this hour, we're asking if you feel represented by the political process and what fair representation looks like to you. You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com. My guests are USA Today Chief Political Correspondent Phillip Bailey and political scientist Charles Bullock at the University of Georgia. And before we go back to the phones, Charles, the courts often step in on these matters. Have they had much of an impact over the years in stopping partisan gerrymandering or removing representation for minority groups?
Yeah, historically, the courts were important, and they were enforcing the Civil Rights Act, and that did protect and indeed did force the redrawing of new districts, which were likely to be won by blacks in the South, Hispanics in the Southwest. There was, during much of the 2010s, the issue was, could someone come up with an acceptable standard for determining what was an unacceptable partisan gerrymander. And as one of the callers earlier pointed out, the Rucho case in 2019 took that off the table. The Supreme Court said, we're not even going to look at that. If you have a filing that says partisan gerrymander, don't come to federal court. Now, some state courts, particularly in North Carolina, have taken up the challenge of trying to determine if partisan gerrymandering is unconstitutional. So courts, yes, have been important. And, of course, the way the game is played, if your party loses in your legislature, the first thing you do is you go and you file a court case. But you're going to have to challenge it now, arguing that it's discriminatory against the minority group within your state.
Lucia is calling from Utah. Lucia, what do you think? Are you represented?
I don't think I'm really well represented as somebody who's a bit more left-leaning, especially, with the latest thing of the Republican gerrymandering of the maps in Utah and the recent court cases trying to overrule that.
Yeah, in Utah, people voted, I believe, a few years ago on an initiative to create an independent redistricting commission, but that has not happened yet.
Yeah, in 2018, they actually voted. It was a narrow vote, but it established an independent districting commission and set rules for the lawmakers for maps if they didn't accept the independent commission's maps.
Yeah. Lucia, thank you. Phillip Bailey, we're hearing over and over again from people calling in saying they do not feel represented by the political process right now.
And I think that often, Jeremy, flows with the results of the election, right? September of last year, Pew Research did a survey about the Electoral College, and they've done this over a number of years. And guess what? Back in 2012, when Barack Obama was reelected, 54% of Republicans and Republican-leaning voters wanted to change the system of the Electoral College to where the person who receives the most votes wins, right? So every time people lose the outcome, they want to change the entire system. I think the entrenched aspect of this, when you talk to voters who come from states and they are different than the state's outcome, when you talk to Democrats or liberal-leaning people in Utah or liberal-leaning people in a place like Kentucky or Mississippi, they have the same sentiment that Republican or conservative-leaning people in New York, Illinois, or California have. And I think, again, the remedy for some of this bubbling up is going to have to come from folks who overlap and saying, hey, maybe we should start having national referendums, right, and overthrow Congress electorally rather than waiting on them and waiting on the politicians to make these decisions. When we see these special elections or these statewide referendums, oftentimes voters, even from conservative states, right? Let's look at, for example, those initiatives about reproductive rights. They were often more left of center, even in states like Kansas, right? You saw people voting for the minimum wage, voting to restore felon voting rights in Florida. And then the Republican legislatures or the legislatures that are Democratic controlled basically try to overrule the voters here. So there is a bubbling up, I think, in this populist era that the MAGA, the Make America Great Again movement, started, that I think needs to be finished in a lot of different conversations in parts of the country. But oftentimes these frustrations come from, hey, I continue to lose at these elections and this electoral process. Where am I supposed to go? And particularly, Jeremy, that we're having this conversation about political violence. Experimentation in American democracy, I think, may release some of that steam as we face some of these larger issues of violence in our politics.
Frank is calling from Western Colorado. Frank, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Yes, I am a blue dot in the red sea of Western Colorado. As the state goes bluer and bluer, I still do not feel represented because most of the legislature and most of the money goes towards the Front Range, which is like the Fort Collins to Pueblo section over there on the low part of the mountains on the east side. So that's where all the legislating is. That's where all the money goes. That's, where everything happens. And yeah, so number one, I don't have representation out here in Western Colorado. Number two, the representation that I do appreciate isn't doing much for my tiny little sliver out here, almost in Utah.
So what's your solution? Do you have one, Frank?
Yes. So this is District 3. It was Boebert until she carpetbagged and left because she knew she wasn't going to win again. I would say ranked choice voting would be fantastic out here. Just to give people, more than... A lot of people out here vote for guns, right? It's a pretty libertarian area. So I would say just give them a second choice, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Or a third choice.
Charles Bullock, what do you think about ranked choice voting as a way to improve representation across the country?
Yeah, of course, before it really kicks in, you have to have a situation in which nobody gets a majority in first choices. And it may well be in western Colorado that it's so Republican that whoever the Republican would be would win outright. So you wouldn't go to trying to make allocations of second choices. It works perhaps best in municipalities which are often nonpartisan. Or it works where you have what's sometimes called a jungle primary, like California does. So that everyone is running together, all parties and whatever, and with a large number of candidates, then you're unlikely to see anyone get a majority in the first round. And so what that does is it encourages candidates to take more moderate positions. What we see happening in our single-member districts, and especially the way they've been gerrymandered, is that the party, which is majority, makes the choice in its primary. Who votes in the primary? Extremists. And this would be very liberal Democrats on the Democratic side, very conservative Republicans on the Republican side. And so that's why the people in the middle may feel like neither side is giving me any kind of representation. And so with ranked choice voting, you might take care of some of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true that, Phillip, the people in the middle often left out, especially as the parties move further to their extremes.
Right, and I think, the reason I think you're hearing ranked choice voting come up more and more is that, ranked choice voting gives and has a better idea for at least turnout for voters who are turned off by this sort of winner-take-all process. And we saw that in the New York City mayor's race where Zoran Mamdani prevailed. And he did that in part because he combined his support with other candidates and said, hey, I know you may not vote for me first, but if you vote for this other guy first, you can vote for me second. And I think the analysis from that race, Jeremy, found that through those 3 rounds of ranked choice voting, Mamdani benefited more than Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York, did. He received, received about 99,000 transferred votes, while I think Cuomo only received maybe around, I don't want to be wrong here, but I think it was 53,000 of those transferred votes. So again, it creates a more dynamic election and a more dynamic race. It forces candidates to build coalitions, coalition governing, coalition campaigning, rather than saying, hey, just vote for this one person. If you don't like anybody else, then you just have to stay home. That's a turnoff for a lot of voters. Whether that will see its way ever creep up to national elections, state elections, races for Congress, I'm unsure about. But like the professor said, at the municipal level, it certainly has excited voters and given them more opportunity because it opens it up to voters who usually are turned off by our winner-take-all process.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah,
super
please.
Short. I just wanted to acknowledge that Texans are writing in like crazy, okay? And also people are writing in all caps a lot. I do appreciate that. Phillip, I had a quick question for you. A lot of people are talking about or asking about money in politics. Do you think it's possible to reform the voting system without taking money out of politics?
Look, I think that Citizens United still haunts all of us, but you have seen in many situations, like, for example, the Wisconsin Supreme Court race where Elon Musk, the world's richest person, threw in a ton of money, and he didn't get what he wanted out of that election either. Right. I think certainly money in politics influences how people visualize and see politics with ads and everything else, but I think there has been moments in our politics where that money hasn't had a direct impact. But I don't think anyone is happy, unless you're very, very wealthy, that you can simply just pour all this money into our races. But again, I'm going to go back to what is actually exciting voters. And what excites voters is when they have more opportunities. And in this populist era where parties, both on the Republican side, we know the Democrats are in the gutter when it comes to their approval ratings. People want more representation. They want more choices. They don't necessarily want party bosses and parties controlling this process. And I think money's a part of that too. And you may see a pushback against that as well as you see with again, all these billionaires and tech folks involved in the Trump administration, that populism will swing to the left, I think, in the next few elections as well.
Okay, John in Springfield, Illinois is back. Hey. And John, here's your chance. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Well, I don't think we're fairly represented. And prior to 1982 in the state of Illinois, the state legislature had two representatives from each congressional district. And they had fewer districts back then. And that way, the minorities had a chance to vote their candidate in, too. So you'd end up with representatives from two different parties.
Interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I just think that's an alternative, for better representation.
Yeah. Interesting. Charles Bullock, did you know about that? What John is talking about?
Yeah. I believe the state was divided, I think, only 59 state house districts, each of which elected 3 individuals. And so what you typically would see is that the majority party could win 2 of those seats, but not all 3. If it tried to win all 3, it was splitting its support too narrowly and would lose maybe 2 of them. So the majority party would just concentrate on winning 2 and let the minority party get a 3rd one. So, yeah, you did then have almost every district being bipartisan in its representation within that state house.
By the way, Charles, what do you expect is going to happen if all the redistricting occurs in Texas and California, and now it looks like maybe Missouri and Indiana and potentially Florida and other states? If they do everything, what are you expecting is going to be the result next year in the midterm elections?
Well, if everything works out the way those drawing the districts hope that they will, then it should enhance Republicans' perspective. But as we talked about earlier, if indeed by drawing these new districts and moving people around, you are narrowing the majority's control in some of the districts it already has, then if there is a wave election, and there's certainly one could talk about why there might be a strong rejection to what's happening currently, then it could mean that despite the best plans of the redistrictors, and Republicans have far more opportunities than Democrats do to create additional seats, that Republicans could actually lose more than they would if they were operating under the existing plans.
Yeah. So it's you can't exactly fix the game because you never know what's going to happen right before the election, too. Let's get another call in. Paul is in Grafton, Wisconsin. Paul, go ahead with your thoughts.
Yeah, hi, this is Paul, Grafton, Wisconsin. Wisconsin used to have 9 representatives back in the 80s, I guess, when I was in school, and now we only have 8. And I recently became aware of 1 representative per 30,000 was how the Constitution was written, and that was only abandoned after Jefferson died in 1828. It would be nice if we could have 1 representative per 30,000.
But we have such a much bigger population now. Charles Bullock, if you wanted to do that, you'd really have to majorly expand the size of the House of Representatives, wouldn't you?
Well, you'd be meeting Houston Astrodome or something like that, yeah. 1 for every 30,000.
Right, exactly. Phillip, what about you? What are you hearing on both the Democratic and Republican side about what people are expecting as a result of all this redistricting next year in the midterms?
Well, look, I mean, as Tolliver asked me about money in politics, misinformation and disinformation, I think, is becoming the chief concern for everyone when it comes to our democracy. I think for Democrats, there is still a feeling that, some of them feel like there won't even be a next presidential election. There is still that fear, right? Even though Supreme Court justices have, I think, made it very clear they don't believe Donald Trump will be running or can legally run for a 3rd term, right? But look, I think that we're all going to have to wait and see how this plays out. As the professor mentioned earlier, all these changes to redistricting in different states may actually anger voters even more, and that wave, and again, let's see how the big beautiful bill plays out, right, in some of these more rural areas when it comes to hospital closures and everything else. Mm-hmm. You may see rural voters who voted for Donald Trump who go, I didn't vote for this. You're already seeing many of them say that now when it comes to immigration and other issues. Yeah. So there's a whole lot of time left here, and no matter how much you want to change the math of the map, this could ultimately be bad for Donald Trump in the long run as resentment builds against his agenda among some of his own supporters.
Well, and it's no matter what happens, it is pretty common for a president to face a backlash after 2 years in office. It happens almost every time. And I can think back to 2010, 2 years after the huge wave of Obama coming in 2008. And it was just, he was wiped out. I think shellacking was the word that
Shellac was, yes, the Tea Party.
Right.
Yeah.
Charles Bullock, I'm going to give you the last word before we go, because you have taught at the University of Georgia since 1968. And I wonder how this moment compares politically to everything you've witnessed, including in 1968, which was the year that Martin Luther King was assassinated, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, the Vietnam War was going on, the protests at the convention, everything else. How does this moment compare politically for you?
Yeah, I think what we have learned is that what we thought were constraints in our system, the separation of powers, the Constitution, statutes, turns out that a lot of what we thought were constraining on the president really were just norms. And we have some person in the White House now who is a norm breaker. And so he is going to push the envelope as far as he can. That means that the only way to stop it would be Congress, but Congress is not doing anything. It's very supine. So then you have to turn to the courts, and the courts may stop some of the things which are happening, but the courts move very slowly. And so right now, we're living in a system which we've never seen before, in which there is increasing executive power, which was not the idea of the constitutional founders, who thought the legislature would be the predominant branch. But Congress is giving away its authority right and left, and the courts are the only constraint that we may have. And they're unelected, of course.
Right. That is Charles Bullock, professor of political science at the University of Georgia, author of the book Redistricting, the Most Political Activity in America. We've also been joined by our old friend, USA Today chief political correspondent, Phillip Bailey. Thanks so much to both of you. And a reminder to subscribe to our podcast, where you can get extra episodes of our One Thing Trump Did podcast every week, only on the Middle podcast feed. And next week, we're going to be right back here talking about what has been lost in education in the digital age. Like, does anyone know how to write with a pen anymore, Tolliver?
Or read a clock. Our number is 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com, where you can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter and send us your ideas for future show topics.
The Middle is brought to you by Long Neck Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Burmistaz, John Barth, Annika Dessler, and Brandon Condris. Our technical director is Steve Mork. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I'll talk to you next week.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.